This is CBC Here and Now.
Police in St. John's are keeping their eyes peeled on this rental property.
Why neighbors on Calver Avenue are so concerned.
Our job is to make sure that our kids are protected at all times.
Blistered and burned. These parents are speaking out.
Their son's bad burn sparks a new summer camp policy. Last night we told you about a problem house on Calver Avenue in St. John's that has concerned residents frustrated and scared. The mayor says the city has done inspections and the house cannot be shut down.
Well, tonight the police and the province weigh in on their roles and responsibilities. Here Now's Megan McCabe has our continuing coverage on this story. Megan, what did you learn today?
Well, neighbors say everyone they turn to, the police, the city, the provincial government, all pass the buck. Residents say that none of them have the authority to intervene, leaving people living here on Calver Avenue completely terrified. So how are these tenants that neighbors are so worried about able to live here? Residents say they're living on the government's dime, meaning their rent is paid through income support from the Department of Advanced Education, Skills and Labor.
No regulations, there's no follow-up, there are no checks, they don't send social workers. If there's X number of complaints on a property, that doesn't stop anyone from receiving money. It just keeps going and going and going, and the money is just funneled into this program without any regulation, and it needs to stop. This is taxpayer money.
The neighbors say they know the people here at 76 Calver Avenue are vulnerable, some of them in and out of jail, living with mental health and addictions issues. But because there's no mandate for anyone to intervene, everyone suffers. For its part, the department says it has no responsibility for the landlord-tenant relationship, and the neighbors' complaints fall under city bylaws or the police.
If it's a crime-related matter, then certainly that does fall to the police to investigate. However, we do have limitations because there are certain requirements for any investigation to end up in charges. We also can't just enter a home. We can't remove people from homes. We can't shut down a house. You know, those are things that are certainly not in our scope.
Neighbors want this house shut down and cleaned up, particularly the alleged criminal activity. But none of the groups involved say they have any authority to do that, although the RNC did confirm that activities here on Calver Avenue are on their radar. Reporting live for Here and Now, I'm Megan McCabe in St. John's.
It took several years and a lot of hard work, but one local restaurant owner in Corner Brook is officially Canadian today. I'll have her story.
A man who ran for mayor of Paradise in the last election faces serious criminal charges. John Roberts is charged with 1 count of sexual assault and 1 count of criminal harassment. Here Now's Ryan Cook reports.
John Roberts ran a campaign against what he called secrecy and backroom politics in the council chambers. But these are the court documents that lay out allegations of secrets in Roberts' own life leading up to the last municipal election. Now, the timeline is quite vague, but the allegations are gruesome. Police say that Roberts sexually assaulted a woman last summer and used a beer bottle as a weapon. Now, it's not clear if the beer bottle was used for the assault itself or if it was used for intimidation purposes. That was in the summer of 2017. And then in the winter, it's alleged he harassed the same victim and made her fear for her safety. Despite the charges stemming from several months ago, they were only laid in provincial court last week. Roberts is known in Paradise for more than just his mayoral candidacy. He's also a contractor and a business owner. And according to his Twitter bio, he was also a national director of the Better Business Bureau. Now, none of these allegations have been proven in a court of law, but Roberts is set to appear again on August 9th. Ryan Cook, CBC News, Paradise.
I, Frank Butt, do solemnly swear that I fully qualified to hold the office of mayor for the municipality of Carpenter, to which I have been elected.
Well, Frank Butt is back in the mayor's chair after a judge ruled that council never should have ousted him in a conflict of interest case back in December. Butt says he's happy to be back. However, there's already a squabble over who pays the legal costs. Deputy Mayor Chris O'Grady says the town has to pay its legal fees, about $57,000, and the judge also ruled that it has to pay some of the court fees. However, Butt also tells CBC that the town also has to pick up some of his legal fees. The town is disputing that.
Philip Pinn was nearly a free man, but now he's facing new charges. The 32-year-old was found guilty of manslaughter for shooting his friend Nick Windsor at a St. John's house in 2011. Pinn was just days away from getting out of federal prison when charges of assault with a weapon and assaulting a peace officer were laid. There are no details around circumstances yet, but Pinn is set to appear in court tomorrow.
98 out of 100 charges from the 2016 school bus inspection scandal have been dropped. Island Bus Services, owned by Paul Cummings, in the white there, he was accused of falsifying inspection certificates for 22 English school district buses. The fleet had defects that ranged from leaky brake lines to broken emergency doors. Cummings and his mechanic, Brian Kent, each pleaded guilty to 1 count under the Highway Traffic Act, and they were fined $3,600 combined. The Bell Island Company was one of 4 businesses accused of having improperly inspected school buses on our roads.
When you swing the sword, you want to kill the other guy. So swing at me. Don't worry. A lot of the feeling disappears if you dumb it down to 2 safe.
Well, the parents of a boy badly sunburned at summer camp say their son is terrified and that his summer is ruined. Chad and Colleen Devereaux are speaking out after the incident that left their 8-year-old with blisters on his back and shoulders. Here now's Jeremy Eaton is on this story and joins us live from the newsroom. So Jeremy, how is the young boy doing today?
Now, his parents did not want him to appear on camera, but I did meet 8-year-old Dawson today. And he told me he feels like a snake, and that's because of the peeling skin from that sunburn. Now, his parents say he doesn't even want to go outside anymore after suffering that sunburn at a Mount Pearl city-run summer camp last week.
So it has to be completely wiped clean and then reapplied 3 times a day.
The Devereaux are doing something they never thought they'd be doing this summer, changing the dressings on their son's sunburn. This is what Dawson looked like after a trip to the beach last week. Blistered, peeling, and painful.
He's doing fine, it's a bit sore, it's peeling a lot, but he's doing much better and he's mending.
While under the care of a Mount Pearl city-run summer camp, Dawson got sunburned. His parents say he was wearing sunscreen when he left their house, but it wasn't reapplied while at this beach.
That's their job, is to make sure that our kids are protected at all times. So even if they were out and the kids took their shirts off, how come they didn't notice that they were out there, A, with no shirts on, and B, with no sunscreen?
The city of Mount Pearl was quick to react yesterday.
It's a challenging environment some days when you're in the water. You can't wait for the sunburn to start to make you sore. You can't wait for your skin to turn red. Our camp counselors have to be vigilant to ensure that the sunscreen is maintained.
Dawson and his father met with Mayor Aker yesterday at City Hall.
Meeting went okay. It was just more or less a meet and greet for Dawson, to meet Dawson, personally apologize to Dawson face to face.
But the apology hasn't changed his thoughts on summer camp. He doesn't want to go back.
The mayor asked him that yesterday, straight up, if Dawson, do you want to go back to summer camp? His reply was no.
He's terrified.
Now, the Devereaux also say that their son's summer is ruined because of this sunburn. Now, due to the blistering, he can't play baseball, a sport that he loves. He can't go swimming in chlorinated pools for fear of infection. And he has a vacation coming up next week to go visit his grandparents in Central. And the fun that he planned to have probably won't happen because of this incident. Reporting live for Here and Now, I'm Jeremy Eaton in the newsroom.
And now to Corner Brook, where years of hard work have paid off for a new Canadian businesswoman. T. Nguyen was among 24 people who became citizens at City Hall today. Here Now's Colleen Connors was there.
Front and center, Nguyen proudly repeats the oath. And now, she's Canadian.
Everybody look like me. Can't wait that day coming. Look like the dream you're coming true.
Nguyen came to Corner Brook and opened Pho Vietnam about 5 years ago. After a snag with the first location, she relocated, and her pho and pad thai have been local favorites ever since. When not running her business, she's been prepping for her citizen's exam.
We would be studying in the restaurant as well, and customers would come in, the same thing, and they would really cheer her on. So she's had a big support behind her. So I'm really proud. I'm really proud. She's been part of our family for the last 4 years, and yeah.
Cheering her on is proud husband Jerry George.
My eyes filled with water. I'm very emotional about what was going on. It was she'd been practicing in the car on the way down, and to see her stand with a group of people and be able to repeat the oath and become a Canadian citizen and receive that document was just, yeah, you can hear it in my voice.
Nguyen plans to stay and run her Vietnamese restaurant for years to come. All that hard work and determination was certainly noticed by her customers. She will be back at the restaurant later today and hopes to celebrate her new Canadian citizenship this coming weekend. Colleen Connors, CBC News, Corner Brook.
Well, you're looking at the Narrows, thanks to our harbor camera.
Yes, a bit of a gray day out there now, but things are going to take a turn tomorrow for sure. Some hot, sticky weather coming for most of the island. I'll have those details coming up.
Well, getting social assistance may soon mean riding the bus for free, and that's something that a number of low-income advocates have been pushing for. NDP leader Jerry Rogers wants the same, and it turns out the province is listening. Malone Mullen now with that story.
Trucking 2 kids around town isn't easy, and for Sabrina Somerton, it isn't cheap. Even a trip to the doctor adds up. That's a problem because her son, Matthew, was born with a hole in his heart.
His health is my #1 priority, and I think that it should be a lot easier to get transportation to his medical appointments where he is sick. He has been sick since he's been born.
Somerton is on social assistance. There isn't much wiggle room in her budget. That makes daily bus rides a problem for her pocketbook.
Being on social assistance isn't a choice for me. I was in school, and then I fell pregnant with my daughter and I had to leave. I wasn't able to finish the program that I wanted, and where I was single, it would have cost more money to put my child into a daycare than it would be for me to go out and work.
Even just to get out of your house and...
Today, the NDP is calling for funding to fix that. While some, like Somerton, are struggling to see a doctor, others deal with isolation. One speaker said it's dehumanizing to be stuck inside, left out of the community. NDP leader Jerry Rogers said Newfoundland and Labrador is one of the few provinces without a plan like this, and that in the long run, a low-income pass would save money.
It would be a cost-saving measure, and it's about prevention and also dignity and benefit for the people of, certainly for St. John's.
Mayor Danny Breen agrees. He told CBC News today that the city met with the province earlier this year to submit a plan for transportation assistance in St. John's. He said it's a way to help people who need it, and it's good for the bus system too. For people like Sabrina and her kids, a low-income monthly pass could mean the difference between healthy and sick. That's why advocates are hoping the province can come up with some spare change for the bus. Malone Mullen, CBC News, St. John's.
Another update is brought to you by Take Charge Business Efficiency Program. Over 570 businesses have saved energy and taken charge of their bottom line. Find out how you can too.
Well, probably because of spoiled of late, I came to work in shorts and a short sleeve shirt, and I realized it was freezing.
It was a bit of a shock this morning.
It was kind of refreshing, though.
Yeah, it was. Do you like humidity or do you not like it? Are you yay or nay?
I like it, but it makes my hair get really curly.
Yeah, me too.
And so, you know, I have to iron it. I have to iron it before we come on, right?
Well, you're gonna have to get the hairspray handy again because the humidity is on its way back. We have a little reprieve today, but tomorrow things are going to change. Let's have a look at our weather on the way. Headlines. Yes, the mugginess returns tonight, and Labrador is looking at quite a few showers over the next little while, really sticking around, but we're looking at a clearing of that humidity on Friday. So this is a look at our highs today. You can see much cooler temperatures on the island compared to recent standards. 18 degrees as the high in St. John's today. Labrador looking at some warm temperatures. 26 was the high in Happy Valley Goose Bay today. Things are going to be changing though. We do have this very humid, warm air mass that's coming through. It's going to bring some showers across the island overnight tonight. Labrador also looking at lots of shower action overnight this evening. You can see really right across the big land, lots and lots of wet weather, and that's going to be sticking around for a while. So the west coast tonight looking at about 5 to 15 millimeters of rain, showers as well in the east, but about 2 to 4 millimeters, so not very much. But for the Cartwright area and for Happy Valley Goose Bay, looking at 10 to 20 millimeters of rain overnight tonight, and that's going to continue through to tomorrow. And we do have some pretty strong winds along the northern peninsula and the Canada Bay area, gusts up to 70 there tonight and tomorrow. So we have a heat warning in effect for most of the island. Really just the west coast and parts of the south are not affected by this heat warning. We're looking at humidex values between 35 and 40 tomorrow. So it's going to be a hot one for sure. So when you wake up tomorrow morning, it's going to be very different than when you woke up today. St. John's metro area looking at 18 degrees to start your day with a mix of sun and cloud. Central area is going to start the day at 20 degrees, and that temperature is really going to bump up throughout the day. Much cooler though in eastern portions of Labrador. So pushing ahead to the day tomorrow, you can see for most of the island it's looking like a nice clear day. Possibility of some showers for the west coast, and those showers continuing in Labrador, looking at 26 degrees as the high in St. John's tomorrow. With that humidex value, going to feel much warmer. Cooler along the southern Avalon, but as you go inland, those temperatures are going to warm up. And as we head into central Newfoundland, really the hot spot tomorrow, 30 degrees is expected as the high tomorrow. And with that humidex, could feel like up to 40 degrees there tomorrow. So you're going to want to take precautions, drink lots of water, don't leave your pets in the car tomorrow for sure. Along the west coast, things are a little bit cooler, but still going to be a pretty muggy day there as well. Along the straits, looking at lots of shower action there. So Cartwright looking at another 10 to 20 millimeters of rain tomorrow. So that is just continuing on, and it's going to continue on into the evening hours as well. For Labrador City, 5 millimeters of rain expected tomorrow, 10 along the coast in the Happy Valley Goose Bay area and Makkovik. Look at Makkovik tomorrow, 9 degrees, quite the difference. They're getting that cold northerly flow, so very different for Nain and Makkovik compared to the rest of the province, but you can see as well some cooler temperatures for Labrador. I'll have a look at your weekend forecast a little bit later.
Michael Whalen actually went to prison because he murdered someone out in Horse Cove, which is now St. Thomas's out in the Tapselway. He was in jail for 4 years.
Jailbreak, another part of Kitty Vitty's story, down at the lake, down by the pen. Installment 2 of our special series is next. Welcome back. Well, this week we're heading lakeside, but not for the rowing. The CBC series Down at the Lake takes a deeper look at the history of where the Royal St. John's Regatta takes place by going back to the archives for the other stories about Quidi-Vidi.
Yes, Down at the Lake is broken down into 4 parts for the 4 directions along Quidi-Vidi's shores. And tonight, in part 2 of our series, we take a closer look at the south side, where Her Majesty's Penitentiary stands today.
The south side of Quidi-Vidi looked very different 200 years ago. It was mainly farmland, a good hike from town. That is until the 1850s, when 2 structures were built, some of the oldest stone buildings still standing in St. John's. The military hospital was built in 1851 by the same workers who constructed the Anglican Cathedral, the Roman Catholic Basilica, and the Colonial Building. When the British garrison was withdrawn some 20 years later, the hospital was given to the Newfoundland government, but for men only. The Victoria Wing, named in honor of Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee, was built later as a women's hospital. The buildings had a number of names over the years: the Forest Road or Quidi-Vidi Hospital, the General Hospital, and today the Dr. A. Leonard Miller Center, named after an influential doctor and politician. It's used for rehabilitation and continuing care these days. Across the street, another stone building, almost as old, Her Majesty's Penitentiary. Opened in 1859, it still houses close to 200 inmates, making it the oldest operating jail in Canada.
My name is Dave Harvey. I'm a retired captain from Her Majesty's Penitentiary. After the Great Fire of 1846, the prison was on Duckworth Street, about where the present-day courthouse is. But after the fire, they moved up to Signal Hill in the old army barracks up there.
It was designed as a smaller version of the Pentonville prison in London, whose inmates have included Oscar Wilde, musician Boy George, and football player George Best. HMP was built outside city limits because no one wants a prison in their backyard.
This was kind of in the boonies. It was a pretty rural living here.
Construction of the prison started in 1852, but because of financial constraints, the project was halted.
There was a lot of materials already purchased, and there was a lot of stone shipped over from Ireland to build the prison. So it's what they did. They auctioned off a lot of the materials that they had here, and it was the RC Episcopal Corporation bought up all the materials, and they built the present-day St. Ban's College. So if you ever drive by on Bonaventure Avenue, you can look in and say that was a stone originally meant for the prison here.
Gradually, other people started moving into the area, which came to be known as Hoylestown.
It was a working class neighborhood, and these people in the Hoylestown area, then they were typically working downtown St. John's. They were working out of Quidi-Vidi. They were the laborers, the working classes. And then on Forest Road, that was for the merchant classes, the upper classes. And they were settling in there and really taking a foothold in about the 1890s.
It was around that time that there was some excitement at the prison, an escape.
Michael Whalen actually went to prison because he murdered someone. He was in jail for 4 years, but he was a very good prisoner. And so Michael Whalen one day is invited out with the rest of the work detail, and they're working over by the old General Hospital on Forest Road. And they're digging away at a trench, and he excuses himself because he has some private business to do. And so he walks away from the guards and the work crew behind a tree, and he looks back and sees, oh, an occasion. So he starts to run. And what was really interesting, he ran around the lakeside with the security guards or the prison guards chasing him. But he's fast, and he escapes right up into the White Hills, which is pretty ironic now, because if you run into the White Hills now, where you're running towards the RCMP headquarters.
Whalen was the penitentiary's only successful escapee. He was rumored to have made it all the way to Boston, Over the years, other inmates have tried, but all were caught.
It was back in the mid-40s. They used to have work details, and at the time they would have the inmates down on the back of the prison on the lakeside digging holes. And it was around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it was around quitting time, but one of the officers noticed that one of the prisoners was, for the past hour, was kind of keeping an eye on him. This prisoner, this individual, took his wheelbarrow outside the gate, dumped his rock, and ran. Now at that time, the boathouse was just below the prison gate, and from what I understand, the boathouse was just built on stilts. So anyway, the prisoner ran, and he ran in underneath the boathouse, and he had the officer that was giving chase. But at the same time, there was an American serviceman saw what happened, and he came down and he jumped up on top of the boathouse, and he called out to the prison guard at the time, and he said, "Throw me your gun." He said, "I'll get him when he comes out."
But the guard knew the prisoner wasn't violent, so they waited, and eventually he did come out.
And they asked him, why did you run? He said, "I wanted to come out for a package of cigarettes," he said. That was his excuse for an escape, right?
A more recent escape attempt happened in the 1970s when some of the inmates were part of a rowing crew out on the lake.
And they rowed for a spin one day, and they got to the bottom of the pond where they were going to make their turn, and one of the fellas jumped out of the boat, took off. Now apparently he wasn't gone for too long, so it was good while it lasted. I mean, it was great. The prisoners used to look forward to going out for their spin, getting outside, so they had to stop all that. One guy shagged it all up.
Tomorrow on Down at the Lake, stories from the west side of Quidi Vidi.
Behind us, there are 2 graves that predate the actual founding of this cemetery.
200 years is 200 reasons to celebrate. On Regatta Day, CBC will be live from the shores of Quidi Vidi Lake. The St. John's Morning Show, Crosstalk, and On the Go will all be in the crowd. Here and Now is a 90-minute live Regatta Day special. CBC, live from Quidi Vidi for the 200th Royal St. John's Regatta.
This is a story about women's work, and it's the dirty work. One at a time.
Coming up on Here and Now, bringing women's history to life in Bannerman Park. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Here and Now. An ancient art form is gaining momentum across the country. It involves swords, daggers, and nerves of steel. Here and Now's Malone Mullen met with a local group to learn about this lesser-known martial art.
You've likely heard of karate, taekwondo, jiu-jitsu, all serious martial arts based on ancient techniques, just like sword fighting. Once an essential skill, largely lost to the ages, now usually reserved for storybooks and Hollywood sets.
Someday, I'll be a knight.
Yes, William. If he believes it enough, a man can do anything.
But the Newfoundland Western martial arts community is hoping for a revival.
Really easy. Even if I'm using two hands, I can't stop it.
As a martial art, it differs from those taught in the East. The goal isn't just self-defense, it's to kill.
We try not to get killed. A lot of the feeling disappears if you dumb it down to too safe, and then of course you have the problem where if you go too rough, you end up hurting people.
When you swing the sword, you want to kill the other guy. So swing it.
Adam Murin shares his knowledge during weekly classes. The techniques and moves all come from medieval books written by knights. Co-founder Lee Gillis studies medieval history at school. He's also a self-taught blacksmith.
I'm getting the fire nice and hot so I can put the knife in there, heat it appropriately without melting it. Once it's a good color, either a cherry red or a bit of above a cherry red, the whole thing doesn't need to be hot. I can pull it out of the fire now, put it on the anvil, experimenting with it. Immersing yourself in that history is, I think, important to being able to understand it better. The same reason you'd go to a living history site like Lots of Meadows and see people dressed up.
Gillis thinks acting out history brings him closer to it.
The reason we should care about it is because if we can look back and see where we came from, we can learn something from it. Even if we just acknowledge what they did, at worst, at best, we can see that maybe something we forgot, something that fell by the wayside, something that still has applicable value. The fact that the past happened, and what people did happened, and it mattered to them and I think to us.
A noble pursuit for these knights in training. Malone Mullen, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, from sword fighting in St. John's to archery in Nova Scotia, a club in Canning is making a medieval comeback of its own. Emma Smith has this report from the field.
It takes some serious skill to hit a target with a bow and arrow. Now try shooting from the back of a horse as it speeds down the track.
In the beginning, it's incredibly awkward. You're bouncing up and down on the horse, and you might be very good at putting the arrow on the string of the bow when you're on the ground, but when you get on the horse, it's a very different story.
The ancient art of horse archery has found a home on this beautiful farm just outside Canning, and it's all thanks to Lance Bishop and his boyhood dream.
By the time I was 9 years old, I thought, I would really like to be able to shoot a bow and arrow from the back of a horse.
Bishop came across an online video a few years ago of a Hungarian archer named Lajos Kásai. He's the founder of the modern version of horse archery that's gaining followers in the US and Canada.
We hold them in our bow hand as we're riding on the horse so that we can kind of quickly access them, shoot them.
The goal is to shoot as many arrows as possible at a target that rotates as the archer whizzes by.
Past arrow that missed the target doesn't matter. You don't worry about the next one, it's just the one that you're shooting right then.
This spring, Bishop started Sea Winds Horse Archers, one of the first clubs of its kind in Eastern Canada. There are about 10 riders, and they meet regularly to train.
People go, "What? I didn't even know it was a thing."
Amy Morrison has ridden horses for years, but until now, she'd never shot a bow.
I would say that people do automatically go, "Oh, that must be really dangerous." But it's actually not, in the sense that when you are learning archery or when you're with a horse, your training's individual. So it's quite a long process. It's not a fast thing. It takes years and years and years.
The club is preparing for its very first training camp and competition next month. And Nova Scotians, they seem intrigued with the idea. Bishop has already filled all 40 spots. Emma Smith, CBC News, Canning.
Well, if you're looking for something gentler than firing arrows or sword fights, perhaps a walk. Summertime's a great time for outdoor walks, and in Bannerman Park in St. John's, fresh air mixes with local history as actors bring the Newfoundland suffragette movement of the 1920s back to life. I met up with Ruth Lawrence, the creator of Other Women Walk. Okay, so Ruth, tell me about this walk you've created.
Anthony, it's called Other Women Walk, and it looks at the time period between 1920 and 1925. And we actually situated in Bannerman Park because surprisingly, a lot of the women that I chose, it naturally worked out that they would be located here. So it looks at women on the margins of the suffragist movement at the time. And when I say the margins, it was people who maybe didn't really see what was in it for them, whether getting the right to vote for women was actually going to make a difference in their lives.
So the women on your walk that people will see because there's some performances, are these actual historic figures or real women?
Yeah, most of them are actually. So I look at Alice Warren, who was a cook who worked at Winter Home for George and Mrs. Goodridge. I also have a story of Josephine Colley. She is a teacher who worked at St. Mary's School.
Right.
And then there's a few composite characters as well, women that I sort of put together 3 or 4 lives to tell one story. So Beulah Bishop is named in the show because most of the story's hers, but there's also elements of other people that I wanted to tell a broader story about, say, factory workers.
This is a story about women's work, and it's the dirty work.
What was the motivation for putting together a walk like this about women in the suffragette movement in 1922?
Myself and Sherry White own the company White Rooster, and we tell women's stories and stories about women. And we've started realizing that not a lot of women's history actually gets told, certainly not in this town. And so we said, well, maybe we can actually create a show. Then, as we were writing it, the American election came up, and I started seeing all of the sort of backsliding that the movement was having, really. Like, suddenly women's rights were being threatened practically every day.
So you wanted to remind people of the struggles that women made a long time ago for what they managed to achieve?
Yeah, and it's really interesting when you're going through the walk, there are things that the women say that other women say to me afterwards, I can't believe that that person said that in 1920. And I said, yeah, like it still exists today, 100 years later almost.
On my way back up here, I was walking up Duckworth and I heard crying in the alley. A young blood of a pup was kicking a little mite of a girl.
So last question for you. What is it that you hope that women or men take away from actually coming and being part of this walk in Bannerman Park?
Well, I hope it shines a light on some of the lesser known history of our city, for sure. I also want to remind people, I guess, a little bit that the struggle for women's rights is still ongoing. We're still working on it. And one of the messages, I think, of the show is you can always be a supporter. There's always something you can do. Man, woman, child, there is a way to help other women, other people, other citizens in their daily lives. And that's really something that I think this show does, and I hope it does it well enough to really inspire people to go out and maybe think twice.
Well, listen, it's been a beautiful summer and great performance in the park. Good luck with the show, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Yeah, kind of a nice way to spend the afternoon. And again, the Other Women Walk tour, created by Ruth Lawrence, who you saw there. And this tour goes in and around Bannerman Park every weekday at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m.
It's running from now until Friday, August 10th, so a little over 2 weeks left. Tickets are $10, $5 for kids 12 and under, cash only. You can learn more about it at otherwomenwalk.com.
Well, that pulsating cardio music means it's time to meet our young athletes. This is Madison Linthorne from Georgetown. 6-year-old Madison is with the CBN Skating Club, and she's also a beginner on the synchro team.
Madison loves to dance, especially if it's jazz or ballet. Way to go, Madison.
And Lily Mae McDonald is from Churchill Falls. She is 4 and also loves to skate.
Yeah, she's part of the Northern Dawn Figure Skating Club and takes part in the Can Skate program. Keep it up, Lily. Congratulations.
Couldn't tell there, but I think Lily was actually holding a lily or some kind of nice flower.
Pretty name, Lily Mae.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it was a little chillier than expected for us who've been spoiled by the heat, as we've mentioned already.
Yeah, but tomorrow is going to be a different story for sure. There's a heat warning in place for pretty much the entire island tomorrow, so things are really going to be heating up starting tonight, actually. So when you go to bed tonight, it's going to be a bit sticky, unfortunately. These are the current temperatures right now. St. John's, we're at 16 degrees. That could actually even go up a little bit tonight. Overnight lows looking at 17 degrees. Badger, Gander, you can see around the 20-degree mark. So yeah, that's expected to keep up overnight tonight. So it could be a pretty warm evening. You're going to want to open your windows for sure. And once again, we do have this heat warning in effect for everywhere except for the west coast and for most of the south coast. So humidex values in the 35 to 40 degree range. So it is going to be very hot tomorrow. And also we have that fog advisory still in effect. That fog really sticking around along the south coast there over the past few days. As I mentioned earlier, we do have a lot of showers going through Labrador tonight. As we head into tomorrow, most of the island is looking quite nice. Not much by way of cloud cover. Could see a few showers there on the west coast, but those showers are really going to continue on into Labrador. All of those scattered showers throughout the day. So for the island tomorrow, we're looking at 26 degrees as the high in St. John's. Going to feel more like 32 with the humidex, and 30 degrees for central areas tomorrow. Going to be very hot, a little bit cooler along the west coast, but still going to feel quite warm tomorrow. And once again, we do have those showers continuing through Labrador. Most of the shower action will be in the southeastern portion of Labrador. Another 10 to 20 millimeters of rain expected throughout the day tomorrow, and that should continue on through the evening as well. As you can see here, those showers just keep pushing through Wednesday night into Thursday. Potential for a few showers there as well on the west coast. Thursday, 5 o'clock is the timeline there. So as you can see, those temperatures are really going to be sticking around really hot for Thursday afternoon. 27, 28 degrees for the central and east, 24 with a chance of showers for the west, and lots of showers, as you can see, up for Labrador, and 24 degrees as the high there. So as we head into Friday, things should start to clear off a little bit in terms of the humidity. The dew point apparently is supposed to drop on Friday, but we do have a lot of showers that are coming through. So those temperatures are staying warm, but it shouldn't feel quite as sticky as that dew point drops. 26 degrees in central Newfoundland on Friday. Lots of showers for the western portion of the island, and 23 degrees and 21 degrees with a chance of showers for Labrador. So yeah, Labrador is in for a lot of wet weather over the next few days as you head into the weekend. This is the picture right now for the weekend. Saturday and Sunday in the east, 22, 24 degrees with mainly cloudy skies. So right now it's looking like that precipitation will hold off, and it should be fairly comfortable in terms of humidity. For central areas, a bit warmer there with those showers on Saturday and Sunday. Still might change. It's still a little bit early. And as well for the west coast, looking at a similar story for the weekend. Eastern Labrador, lots of showers pushing through for the next 5 days, really. Temperatures a little bit cooler there as you head into Saturday, 20 degrees. And for western Labrador as well, very similar story. Lots of showers and rain throughout the next 5 days. And as you head into the weekend, temperatures around the 20-degree mark. And that's your forecast. Anthony, back to you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Investigators are digging deeper into the life of the man accused in the mass shooting in Toronto on Sunday. Police have been sifting through the apartment and computer of Faisal Hussein, trying to figure out what motivated the 29-year-old's fatal rampage. And today, both the City of Toronto and the federal government are talking about a further tightening of gun laws in this country.
With respect to the reporting of mental health issues by healthcare officials, healthcare professionals, should there be a positive duty if they detect a mental health issue to report that?
Now, at the scene of the shooting, businesses have started to reopen, and there's a growing memorial to the victims. An 18-year-old woman and a 10-year-old girl were killed. 13 people also wounded, and the gunman also died, and now an autopsy is being done to determine whether he committed suicide or whether he was shot by the police during the attack. Well, with the impending legalization of recreational marijuana in Canada, new problems are developing at the U.S. border. Canadians with connections, even indirect connections to the pot industry, are now being denied entrance, and some are facing lifetime bans. CBC's Tanya Fletcher has that story.
Starting in April, I'm starting to see 1 or 2 cases a week.
This U.S. immigration lawyer is based in Blaine, Washington. These days, he's dealing with a whole new crop of clients, business travelers.
So these are professionals from Canada who either work for a company that does business with the U.S. cannabis industry, or themselves individually, they're coming down to do business.
He's seeing many with even loose associations to marijuana now being turned away at the border.
You know, selling a machine, a legal machine from Canada to a U.S. customer, owning property in the United States that has a tenant who's in the cannabis industry. So it's a very far stretch, but they're making that connection and denying Canadians.
He says there's been a lot of confusion because, yes, even though pot has already been legalized over there in Washington state and soon to be on this side here in Canada as well within a few months, the border between the two countries is still federal jurisdiction patrolled by those American border guards.
And the concern is not one of inconvenience. The concern is one of a lifetime ban from entering a country where you might have other business, you might have family.
And industry advocates say it's fears like those that are leading to extreme measures like these before traveling to the U.S.
Wipe their phone clean or only communicate in certain apps so they can delete the app, or going to the extreme measure of shipping their phone ahead to their destination is a reality that we're not used to as Canadians.
Having previously served as BC's health minister, Terry Lake knows a thing or two about lobbying federal governments, and that's exactly what he plans to do.
You know, I think we'll have to really press for some discussions with the federal government to try to intervene on behalf of anyone that's not just directly involved in the cannabis industry, but let's say you make lighting systems that happen to be used in greenhouses. All of a sudden, you may get a lifetime travel ban into the United States.
The most disheartening part, they say, is that until something changes on a federal level, they're left with only 2 options. Either stop working in the marijuana industry or stop traveling to the U.S. altogether. Tanya Fletcher, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, imagine quitting your full-time job to pursue your dream. That's what one Montreal lawyer has done. He's building electric skateboards to sell around the world. CBC's Kate McKenna has that story.
This is the dream of Alex Archambault. Until last week, he worked as an intellectual property lawyer. Today, he builds and sells electric skateboards. It's a niche he discovered when he was looking for one himself.
Last summer, looked into, going to work on one of these electric skateboards and kind of started looking at them and wasn't so impressed.
He says the selection online was underwhelming and that he found most electric skateboards were just skateboards with motors added.
It seemed like you'd always be putting Tesla technology on a horse carriage.
So, with the help of 2 engineers, he made his own. People on the street noticed and stopped him to ask where they could buy it. He started selling them and formed a company with his brother.
It's much more stable at high speed. It's much more playful at low speed. It has inflatable tires so you can go through potholes and up a curb, down a curb.
They're not cheap. They run for over $2,000. Despite that, he says they're selling to people as far away as New Zealand.
Our typical client uses them to go commuting, but what they wind up doing from what the feedback that we've been getting is actually getting their commute, finding a commute that is 3 times as long as their usual commute because they're just so fun to ride on.
So far, that fun hasn't worn off for him. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Montreal.
Today's viewer our photo of the day. Isn't this stunning?
It's pretty spectacular. 2 points, gorgeous. Second point, not a clue.
Oh, really?
I'm trying to see.
You are going to be surprised.
It's a memorial, right?
It is a very famous memorial.
Okay.
Hard to tell the silhouette. We'll have the answer up next.
Okay, on to a pretty exciting story for you animal lovers, and we're all animal lovers. Parks Canada thrilled to announce the arrival of Made in the Rockies bison calves this week.
It's a sign of success for a project that relocated 16 bison to the remote backcountry of Banff National Park a year and a half ago.
Last spring, 10 calves were born to the herd in the Panther Valley, the first births in the region in 140 years, and now that herd will be moved to the eastern slopes of the park later this summer.
Bison disappeared from the area before it became a national park in 1885.
Yep, gorgeous. Yeah. Now on to some other beauty. I realized during the commercial where this was.
Yes, gorgeous photo of the Sealers Memorial in Elliston.
It helped that people on Twitter saying you're some stunned, Anthony. But
you knew it. Fred Woodman, thank you so much for sending in this stunning photo.
Yeah, it's beautiful. All right, we'll see you tomorrow.
Good night.